Hey, it's Sean from the driver's perspective, and today it's time for more upgrades with the Toyota 86. Up next is going to be the AP Racing Sprint Big Brake Kit. The car needs a lot more brakes to handle track use, and it's a quick way to save some weight, so I spent some time researching what brake kits were available for the car, and I came to the conclusion this is the best one for the job. It utilizes super high quality AP Racing J-hook rotors. These will last a really long time. I would expect most people to get multiple seasons out of these. It also uses super high quality AP Racing 4-piston calipers, which are sized to match the factory rear brakes and keep the factory balance correct. That's really important, especially if you turn off traction control or you do the quote-unquote pedal dance, which eliminates the electronic brake force distribution. Additionally, with the AP Racing Sprint Big Brake Kit, you get Spiegler stainless steel front brake lines. The factory brake lines on the 86 and the BRZ and the Scion FRS, they're already stainless steel. So this is really only necessary just to connect the AP Racing 4-piston caliper to the factory hard lines that are already in the car. But it's a good idea to replace your brake lines on your cars after a couple of years of competition use or hard use on tracks. Eventually they do wear out, so something just to keep an eye on and make sure they're not getting tore up in your car. The AP Racing Big Brake Kit does not include any brake pads, and they do that on purpose. That's so you can pick exactly the brake pad that you want. Figuring out what brake pad you need really could be left to a whole nother video. To quickly summarize though the important aspects, it's important to understand what tire compound you're using, what your intended use is, and how much you're willing to put up with extra dust and noise. In my case, I'm actually going to use two different sets of pads. For the street and autocross, I like the Porterfield R4-S. It's a low dust compound, it's really easy on rotors, it warms up quick. It's just a good do-it-all pad. So street use, autocross use, perfect. For big track, you want a pad with a little bit higher coefficient of friction. I like the Porterfield R4-1. It's kind of a hybrid pad. It does everything well. It heats up really fast, so you could even street drive it if you need to, but it does dust quite a bit, and it can make some noise depending on how you drive it. On track, and when they're new, you really don't hear any noise, but if you street drive them a lot, you usually get some squeaks, and some people just don't like that. I plan on swapping them out a lot, like I said. I find it a lot easier to use the right pad for the right application rather than try and just get along with one pad. It costs a little bit more money, but benefit is you're not hating life when you're driving the car around day to day. So something to keep in mind. The R4-1 has served us really well in the Miatas, and I think with how much bigger these front rotors are, it'll be a good match for the car, especially since it's going to be a TT or a time attack car. You really only need 3 laps to get that done. I'm not worried about it surviving 20 laps in a row and having the brakes never fade at all. If that's going to be consideration, brake ducts or a different pad would go on properly. So while the factory brakes are adequate for street use and autocross use, unfortunately these just do not have the thermal capacity that you really need or want for big track. You can make it work with a good set of track pads and a higher quality rotor, but at the end of the day, you're just going to burn through those components a lot quicker. So if it's in your budget, it's best just to spring for the big brake kit in the beginning, because you'll end up saving money in the long run if this is something you enjoy. So Rocky here is removing all of the brake fluid from the fluid reservoir in the engine bay. That way, when we go to take the brake lines off and swap it over to the new ones, we don't have fluid that just continues to drain out and creating a big mess. So if you know you're going to flush the entire brake system after you do your big brake kit installation, you should do this step before you do anything else. So one important step about installing this big brake kit, this dust shield in the back. According to Essex Racing, they say that this is optional, but from what I read in the instructions, you pretty much just want to remove this. You either need to bend it and possibly cut it to make it fit, and really this is not doing anything other than preventing a little bit of dust being kicked up into the wheel well, so you can ditch this and no ill effects. Hey, 55 pounds. So an important step when you get new rotors, you need to wash off all of the coatings, but make sure to reference the instructions or the manufacturer recommendations, because each coating is going to be a little bit different. In the case of AP Racing, they recommend some soap or simple green and some water to wash them off. So we'll do that real quick, and that'll make sure the rotor surface is ready for the new brake pads to bed in properly. So there's a lot of benefits to big brake kits, and the first thing that you're getting with it is increased thermal capacity, so you can do more laps on the track before you get brake fade. Additionally, you get this much larger 4-piston caliper, so you're going to get more of an even clamping force on the brake pads, which means you're going to get more even pad wear. And with a stiffer caliper, you should have a better brake feel as well, because less items in the brake system are flexing. With a big brake kit like this, you usually lose a little bit of weight. In the case of the Essex kit, it's a 20-pound loss, 10 pounds per side, and that means that ride quality is going to actually get better as a byproduct. I also found out that the TRD 15-spoke wheels easily clear this big brake kit, which is really nice. Essex provides a really detailed fitment guide that tells you all the wheels that clear, what requires a spacer, and what's not going to fit. And here at the shop at Goodwin Racing, we're also doing a lot of work to figure out what wheels fit that we carry. The hypergrams, for example, clear no problem. The new decagrams clear no problem. So this kit, even though it's so big, pretty much clears everything else out there other than the factory 17x7s, which does clear with a spacer, but it requires a thick enough spacer that you do need to upgrade to extended studs to safely run that. So while the Essex big brake kit is relatively straightforward in terms of installing, the one area of the instructions that I think are a little bit lacking, and some people have pointed out, is you have to be very careful how you orient this brake line. It's really easy to get it twisted up. So when you install this, just take a little extra time to make sure everything is routed nicely and it's not digging into the braided line at any point or causing any kinks. The rotors are completely resurfaced now, so they're ready to receive the new pad material from the Porterfield R4-S pads. If you don't have access to a brake lathe like we do, you can always take your rotors to a automotive repair facility, and for a small fee, maybe around $20, $30 a rotor, they'll resurface it. Or if you want, you can always just get brand new rotors, but if you change brake pads a lot like I do and you test different compounds, it's not always feasible, so it's a lot easier just to have them machined down and you can then try a different pad. Because I'm running Porterfield pads, both the R4-S and the R4-1, I don't have to resurface the rotor in between pad swaps because they're made by the same company, and that company has let me know that they are compatible with each other. When in doubt, always check with the brake pad manufacturer. They'll let you know what compounds are compatible with each other. Not every compound is, and it goes with even the same manufacturer. So just double check. You don't want to mix compounds and end up with poor brake performance as a result. It's day 2 at the shop, and it's time to finish up the big brake kit install. All that's left is to bleed the brakes with some high temperature brake fluid and then take it out for a test drive. Not all brake fluid is created equal, so you want to make sure you're using a high quality brake fluid. At the shop, we like using the Wilwood 570. It works really well, and for a street driven car, it doesn't take on water too fast, so you can pretty much leave this in your car a decent amount of time. You don't have to worry about flushing it. Some of the more dedicated racing fluids really require you to flush the fluid between events, and depending on what your situation is, that may or may not be really feasible. So you just need a good street fluid. This Wilwood 570 will get the job done just fine, and it's pretty inexpensive. It's about 10 bucks a bottle. Go ahead. Relax. Okay, go ahead and start pumping. Up and relax. Flushing the brakes is complete. We went through 3 12-ounce bottles of fluid. So I'd probably order 4 if you're doing a big brake kit install. That way you have 1 extra for pop bleeds later in the year, or if you need to rebleed when you get trackside. It's pretty common when you do a brake installation that after you do the install and you get to the track and you get some real heat into the system that you'll need to bleed the brakes again. So don't be surprised if you get a soft pedal after that first session. This is the finished installation of the AP Racing big brake kit. It's really nice. They pre-assemble these rotors. everything went together really well. Fit and finish is super high quality, no complaints there. No leaks from poorly made fittings or anything machined incorrectly. Overall, really awesome kit. Super excited to see how this performs on the track. Hopefully we'll be there at the end of this month going to Chuckwalla for the TRD Cup. Okay, installation is wrapped up on the big brake kit install, so I'm just gonna put the wheels on, go take it for a test drive, and I'll give you my impressions in another video. Thanks for joining.